just having a conversation. I know we have a lot of great culture builders in the room here, so we're kind of preaching to the choir. If you haven't read the book, Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk, you should start it. So my name is Lori Power. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a group benefit consultant. Part of what I do for my clients is to keep them informed. And that means I have to connect with the very best people in the industry that I can find that is of interest to them and can help boost their business, because all boats float on a good tide. So it's my great pleasure to have Richard join in today from Florida. Don't rub it in too badly. And to talk to us today about leadership, employee engagement, and to walk us through what really does make a contented cow. Richard, how did you even come up with that name?
Well, it's interesting that you asked, because today, right here in the Zoom box, you'll see the name of Bill Catlette. And Bill Catlette is my business partner and co-author. And I have to give the credit. I won't give all the credit for the whole book to Bill, because we shared that pretty well. But I got to give all the credit for the title to Bill, because it was Bill who had this, the idea to use that. It was funny when we go, Bill and we've been in business for 25 years. We've known each other for about 30 years. Bill, wave your hand, say hi. There's Bill. Bill's joining us from his home in Collierville, Tennessee, outside of Memphis. But Bill and I had known each other and worked together on some different projects. And it was along about 1995, 96, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I want to write a book, but I want to write it with you. And here's what it's about." And it's about the fact that organizations that have a strategy and an intentional way of creating a great workplace seem to make more money than those who don't. And I want to call it Contented Cows Give Better Milk. And so like I said, Bill first uttered those words to me. And oh yeah. And so we went with that. And I'll tell the story. Bill can tell it better, but I'll tell the story that the wording really comes from kind of a mixture of Carnation Milk, which has for more than 100 years advertised that their milk comes from contented cows. But then Bill read an article written by the legendary baseball manager Tommy Lasorda, who has only just recently passed away. And he had written an article saying, contented players give better performances. And I think Bill kind of conflated those two ideas, and that really became our brand. We went to the folks at Nestle, which then and still now own the Carnation brand, and I remember some lawyers said, "Don't even ask. They're not even going to let you even touch that." So we asked, and they said, "Sure." So we have, and I just was going through some files the other day, and I came across the letter that gives us permission to use the phrase contented cows. But I also have to say that one of the first things that Bill and I always say, and it's one of the first things that's addressed in the book, one of the first things that Bill and I say whenever we're speaking to an audience, and that is, we are not comparing your people to cows. And as somebody pointed out, it is not very politically correct, nor is it kind, I guess, to call your employees cows. So we're not doing that at all. We're just simply saying that in the same way that contented cows do give better milk, and that's been pretty well scientifically established, satisfied employees, engaged employees, motivated employees give better performances at work. That always finds its way to your customer, and that always finds its way to your bottom line.
One thing that I like, backed by the data, that's what really grabbed me from the first page, was how you had applied the revenue stream to the data. Take me through, like, I can't even imagine the research that you've gone through to collect that data and make that relevant, and the challenge. Tell everybody about the challenge.
Well, the book Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk is the second in that particular title. The first book, Contented Cows Give Better Milk, actually came out in 1998. So it was between 1996 and 97 that Bill and I put all of that together and wrote it. People say it's an easy read. I think Bill would agree it was not an easy write. But yeah, we, and Bill really spearheaded that part of it and said, let's look at organizations, because, you hear all these same companies all the time that are known as the best places to work. They're the most admired companies and so forth. And Bill said, just without doing a lot of research, just kind of anecdotally, it seems like the ones that you hear about that are great places to work are also the ones that are great places to own stock in, because they make a lot of money. And that's when we actually, began to pull out the Excel spreadsheets and go into the data. And in that first book, we actually took 6 companies that had well-established reputations as great places to work, and then 6 companies that didn't have great reputations for being great places to work. In fact, they had pretty lousy reputations. And a lot of people said, oh, I know what you did. You looked at the numbers and then you found the ones that would help make your argument. That's not what we did. We did exactly the opposite. I guess if it had come out another way, we wouldn't have written the book, right, Bill? But it did come out that way. We looked at these 6, we looked at those 6, and then the first book is just a lot of anecdotes about other companies. When we came to the second iteration of the book about 14 years later, we, instead of comparing a group of companies to another group of companies, we compared the group of companies to the US economy as a whole. And again, the argument still held. It was even stronger, that companies that have a strategy and are intentional about employee engagement and the quality of the workplace and the culture, they make more money, they have lower turnover, they recruit better people, they grow faster, they're more productive, they're more profitable, all of that. And we tried to make the numbers come out a different way, and we just couldn't. Every way you look at it, there's a strong correlation. We've always been very careful to say, we're not saying there's causation. That would be impossible to establish that. But correlation is really easy to see, and it's pretty strong.
I get 2 main arguments when I talk about what I love about fantastic culture and how it impacts that bottom line. The first argument that I get is, well, that's okay for those companies because they have the size, they can handle it. To which my response is, well, they didn't start off that big.
That's right.
They started off just like you and I. And the second thing is those people that are much like some of the conversations that you have had, where they're just not interested and you can't fake it. And I love that section in the book where you say, you know what, you can try to fake it for a couple of years, but over the long term, walk through that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes, and I use this usually when I'm speaking to an audience, comes from the long deceased saxophone player, Charlie Parker. He was talking about music, and he said, if you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn. And I think that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. You've got to live those values. You've got to live all that mission. But Bill and I talk about, a mission statement. One of the things is that you probably saw in the book, Laurie, we talk about this. We show this great big long wordy mission statement. It's really comical to read. And then we talk about our friends at the company Chick-fil-A. And I was doing, this was, 25, 30 years ago, and was doing some management leadership training with Chick-fil-A in their corporate headquarters in Atlanta. And if you know anything about Chick-fil-A, they're not in Canada, but they're kind of an iconic organization here in the US, known for not only having great customer service, but being a really very attractive place for a lot of people to work. And we were talking with them about this whole idea of missions and everything. And one guy said, well, he said, this is not exactly our mission statement, but if you ask our founder, Truett Cathy, what it is we do here, he'll say, we sell chicken. It's as easy as that. And so that later that same day, we were getting on an elevator, myself and about 3 other people in the group, getting on an elevator. Here we had been in this leadership training class, got in an elevator, and there was Truett, the icon of the company. And he got on there, and he was a good old boy from Georgia, and he looked at everybody and said, what y'all doing? And they all looked at him, and in unison they said, we're selling chicken. And it was true. That's what they were doing. No, they were on a leadership course, but they were selling chicken because everything they did was about selling chicken. And that's kind of where we come from that with, what are you really about? And it can be about your values. And there was another time I was working with a big pharmaceutical company, and they were so proud they had this big glass wall where they had etched into glass the values of the company. And I said, well, that's very impressive. I said, let me tell you this. Let me ask you to do this. So the next group of new employees you bring in here, don't show them the wall. Let them work here for 6 months. Then let me talk to them and let me ask them what the values of the company are. If what they say matches the etching on the wall, then I believe it. If not, I think, we've got more work to do.
And I love that example of when you've gone into companies who have these great mission statements and you ask the employees, why are they here? Why are they here? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you doing and how are you doing it? And none of that meshed up. And the direction is if you don't know which direction you're going in, you're never going to get there anyway.
And really, to your point, Laurie, it's not about having a lot of money to throw at people. I mean, the whole compensation thing is becoming, I think it's an issue in 2021 that it has not been in certain years, but that's a topic for another day. But it's not about the goodies, and it's not about the corporate cafeteria and bring your pet to work day and, all of those kinds of things. Those things come from a culture that values their employees, but you can't apply those. You can't just throw those in and say, okay, we're a great place to work and we're going to make more money.
I like that point as well. And you can take that right back to the farm, right? You wouldn't overfeed your cows and expect the same quality of milk. You don't want lazy people. You don't want people coming just because. What are you finding with culture in your company? I pick on benefits by design all the time because another Michael there, Mike Catlette, and he does a fantastic job. I've known from day one with benefits by design, what they do, how they do it, and it's a great place to work. It was one of the first things that I learned about their company.
I like how you said like you live with your values and you live them every day, because I feel like everybody at BBD does that. So we have a tag phrase, together, adapt, grow, and everything we do, whether it's in the company, to a client, to another employee we're working with, or a colleague, we're always living that together, adapt, grow. How can we do it together? How can we adapt to what's in front of us, and how can we grow from it? And I feel like if we can always look at what we're dealing with that, then we're really living the values. And it just seems to have brought everyone kind of to lean in. And I think the culture kind of just manifests that way. And people that really live by tags stay at BBD, and then it just grows from there.
And it's not everybody's cup of tea. I know I'm going to pick on you now, Natasha, as being a culture and people first. Culture takes work. When you first started as in this role, you had to have a look at a mission and how to bring everybody in.
I would say it probably took me a few months. I took a lot of time getting to know all of the staff on a personal and professional level. I think you need to genuinely care about people in order to be able to efficiently, grow a positive and effective culture. And I spent a lot of time asking them what's working, what's not working, right? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? And taking notes. And then after about 3 months, I was able to, compile a lot of data and go back to the leadership team and say, this is what I'm seeing, right? And here are my suggested changes. And even just little things. One of them was, we're in insurance, and they were all, one of the things that came up a lot was the rating engine we were using to quote home insurance. It wasn't working well. And so I took that information back to the leadership team and just said, this isn't working for our staff, right? We have a lot of other options. Let's look at something else. And we were easily able to make that change. And it wasn't, but all it took was, just speaking to the employees and finding out what's working for them and what's not, right? What's going to make their life easier every day to come in and give 110% and take care of the clients instead of them dealing with some rating engine that isn't working properly, right? And causing them frustration.
I like the example in the book that you give too, Richard, that it has to be a long-term consistent approach. So one of the first examples that he uses in the book is the company out of Scotland, and the cloth manufacturer, I guess is what it was in the time period, Victorian time period. And then when they lost sight of that culture.
My wife comes from the southwest part of Scotland, and in fact, our daughter lives in Glasgow right now, but many years ago, and we've been married for 34 years. I was going to say 100. It hasn't been that long, but 34 years, yeah. And many years ago, I went to visit New Lanark in Scotland, and that's where I learned a lot about what Robert Owen came up with. He said, and it's not rocket science because there were no rockets then, but he said, maybe if we make it so that our people are not dying from overwork and dysentery so often, maybe we'll make more money here. And he did that, and he created a really great environment. Then people kind of, it got to be where, let's see if we can take this to the extreme. And when they did, it all fell apart. But it still is a great example. And I loved what Natasha said. And two things we can take from Natasha's company. Number one, Lori, when you said at the beginning, oh yeah, well, this is great for the great big companies. Natasha's company is not a great big company, and yet look at the culture that they've built there because they're intentional about it. But then the other thing is, and one of my favorite quotes comes from Peter Drucker, the late great management guru, and he said, 90% of what we call management consists of making it difficult for people to get things done. And what Natasha just proved is when you do the opposite, people love it. So they took at your company, and I'd not heard this example, Natasha, until now from you, but they took those little pebbles out of people's shoes, and the irritant of that rating system, and said, let's see what we can do to make your job easier, more fulfilling, where you can do a better job, be more successful. And it's those little things. And I think that's what builds employee engagement, not some of maybe the things that we always hear about.
Absolutely. And well, I just wanted to add to just a little something about the size of the company, because we are 40 employees right now. And I will say over the past couple of years in my role, what I've started to notice is that because that is the way our culture is, as we continue to grow, when I am recruiting staff, it's just something that's known about our company now, right? Optically. So that helps me with recruiting. And when we are orientating and onboarding new staff members, it's like all of my staff are little culture ambassadors, and I actually have to work less hard on informing staff members how our culture is, because my staff said, oh, this is how things are done here, right? Sort of thing. And, this is all the great stuff that we get. And if you have a problem, like Richard said, a pebble in your shoe, go tell Natasha, because she'll fix it, right? And so, and it makes it, instead of, if we were huge and then starting this, it would be so overwhelming and encompassing, right? If you start small, it grows as your company grows.
Yeah.
I agree. I love that it's not about throwing money at them, right?
Yeah.
It is, to your point, it's about looking at those pebbles in the shoe.
And it really is about the reputation. One of the things that I often say is these 4 words: reputation recruits, reality retains. So you've got to have that reputation that people understand. But then once they get in there, that reality has got to match the reputation that they heard about.
And I say we're speaking to the choir here, because I know everybody in this room understands the importance of the culture to create that revenue stream. I loved just to bring it back to the Canadian example, I love the example of the Maple Leafs. The ownership group. Yeah,
we were talking with the folks at the company that owned the Maple Leafs, and they at the time, I don't know if they still do, they owned the stadium and they owned several other teams and all of that. And they were just talking about the value of their culture, and again about their values, their corporate values. And so I had the opportunity to get on the phone with this was before Zoom. I had the opportunity to get on the phone with some random employees. They gave me a list of like 20 random employees. One of them was a Zamboni operator, and I said, all right, tell me what the values are of the company. And they all knew them. They didn't get them in order, which told me that they hadn't memorized them. They told me what they were, and they just simply were.
Presumably winning the Stanley Cup isn't one of their values.
Well, no, but they're working on
it. But they've taken the theme of being in sports, and they've renamed, player of the month, and they've
I'm sorry. Yeah, that part. Oh yeah, they really have taken it to a high level of player of the month and player of the year, and they have a lot of fun with it.
Sure. So Richard, I'm interested to sort of drill down on the why. So what have you thought about, does your research go as far as to say why contented cows produce better milk? Not cows, we're talking about the people. Because it seems to me that if you can do away with the workplace complaining, the pebbles in your shoe, I love that. Is that the nugget?
Well, that's part of it. But Bill and I have actually thought a lot about that very specific question, and we have an answer. And if you said, why is it that there's a connection between an organization's strategy around employee engagement and their results, we think it has to do with something called discretionary effort. Now I'm going to get real HR organization development nerdy geeky here and talk about discretionary effort, and I love that term. You can tell I'm getting excited about it. But discretionary effort has been defined as that increment of human effort, the expenditure of which is at the exclusive discretion of the worker. It's just another way of saying it's what we do because we want to, not because we have to. And if you look at it from a purely economic sense, discretionary effort is the most profitable morsel of labor that your workforce can provide to you, because you can't pay for it. You can inspire it and motivate it out of people, but you don't pay for it. So you get all this effort, you don't have to pay extra for it, and you can feel completely guilt-free about it, because again, it's what people do because they want to. So it's that difference between that of which we're capable and that which is required of us. And when people know what that gap is, if you can get people to work in that gap right there, man, you are golden, and you're really able to create some magic in the workplace. So that's the simple answer. Yeah, whatever it is you can do to get people to go above and beyond, to go that extra mile, and to do it because they want to, that's going to be what drives your employee engagement. That then drives your better business outcome.
There is still the valid, measurable information that you also use. Bill, I'm going to put you on the spot since it was your idea for the name. You have used actual cows on farms to say how much more milk they actually get when they are contented.
And there actually have been good studies done about the additional production from cows, and we've talked to some of the scientists and farmers who were involved with it. And they started talking about whether the feed lot is level or cows have to stand on a slope. Is the ground dry? Just a whole list of discrete things that if you want to have happy cows and producing more and better milk, you do those things. And oh, by the way, that same stuff is what we found in digging into this, taking contented cows indoors. And the fact there's a lot of specific behaviors there as leaders. And you tripped on one of them a few minutes ago, Lori, and that was it. Just to extend what you said, just a half step, a great place to work is not a great place for everybody. Right. And these organizations realize earlier than most that if they've made a mistake, it's not going to work. And they're not bashful about sitting down with you saying, look, both of us made a mistake here. Let's clean it up and get you on to your next thing. Because they realize that just having somebody around there for one more day who isn't pulling their share attitudinally, it's wrong, we just screwed up. We hired somebody that can't do the work. That's going to drag down the whole place. And to the comment that was another one that was made a few minutes ago, if you were to start with a huge organization, the size of a General Motors, for example, and say, we've been doing this all wrong. We're going to redo our culture, and we're going to buy into this contented cows thing. And oh, by the way, we've got 500,000 employees scattered all over the world. But good luck. That dog isn't going to hunt. So, every single one of these organizations that we found have a good long run with this. This wasn't something new for them. They started out with it when they were very small. One of them, a place that I used to work, FedEx. On a good night when I started with FedEx, we hauled about 2,000 packages. We had 20 airplanes. And they started with the same exact belief set. Now they're hauling tens of millions of packages all over the world every night, but they're still trying their best to live that stuff. So they're serious about it. There's just a lot of discrete behaviors and things they're getting checked off.
And I think that is peppered throughout your books as well. Is sometimes you have to find your happiness elsewhere. Sometimes this is not, like Google says, it's not for everybody. Right? If you're interested in a life outside of work, this may not be the place for you.
One of the things was I really liked what you said about covering up the values on the wall, because I think that is so important. Values have to be so much more than words on a wall. And one of the ways when I'm working with my clients in operationalizing values is those are where the stories come from. And that's right. Your company stories come from those values, and then they start to be shared experiences throughout the company. And even starting, you know, every company knows that you should start blue collar companies, you should start your meetings with a safety moment. Well, I encourage them to start it with a values moment. Tell a story about one of your values. And that's where you start to collect those stories. So that's really great. What I found is working with smaller clients, or, you know, when I'm talking to potential clients about, let's really dig into this and create that vision and those values and this really strong culture, that's fluffy. Why do I want to do that? Or I'll do that when I have time, or like to Lori's point, we're just not big enough. I guess they read the book. I'll just give them the book.
That's a good start. Yeah, it really is a matter of, asking yourself a few questions. Do we have people who are doing more than they have to here? Are they really, people talk about what is employee engagement, and I can give you a great big long scientific definition, or I can just make it simple and say, how into it are you? How into your job are you? How into this organization are you? And if you're into it, we're doing all right. If you're kind of out of it, then you're not. So I would say, look at your culture, look at your organization. Are people leaning forward? Are they giving it their best? Are they giving you not only their great labor, but are they giving you a lot of their mental energy, a lot of their ideas, and those kinds of things? And one of the things that Bill and I strongly advocate for is doing employee surveys. And full disclosure, we are also a survey provider. So, but doing employee surveys to find out where are we getting it right, where is it not right, and how can we strategically move ahead to create the kind of organization that attracts the best, retains the best, and keeps people productive. We don't want to just focus on attracting and retaining, but then what are we doing once we get them there? And I think, just in the last few minutes that we have here, one of the things we really are going to have to take a hard look at in organizations is this idea of the return to the traditional workplace. And, are we going to return to the traditional workplace? And what are the rules that are going to govern that? I think a lot of people in senior leadership have got a rude awakening coming to them if they think that they're going to say, all right, we're going to go back to the way it was in January of 2020 because the virus is over. And of course, the virus is not over. But even if the virus were over, that's irrelevant. And so the option now to work in different modalities, work from anywhere, work from home, work different schedules, the flexibility and all that, the rabbit is out of the hat on that. We've seen it. We've been to the promised land. We know what it's like. And it's going to be really hard to go back the old way. And unfortunately for employers, they're not in charge right now. It's the workforce that's in charge. And I think organizations that are going to be successful moving forward are going to really have to look at what kind of an environment do we have? Are we going to be able to provide and have to provide if we still want to attract and retain the best?
I think next book is Contented Cows Work in Various Pastures. Murray, go ahead with your question.
I like that.
Hey, Richard, my question has to do with preserving cultures when you're acquiring an organization or being acquired. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's been historically one of the most difficult challenges for organizations to do. And in fact, a number of mergers and acquisitions have failed, not because it was not a good business mix, but because it was a culture mismatch. And so, number one, before you do that, you got to make sure that there is the potential for the two cultures to even get together. But then you have to work really hard to find out from people, what is the best part of this culture? What is the best part of that culture? And how can we preserve that so that we do have continue to have an organization that functions well? Because you cannot just ignore that. It's got to be about we talk about hiring for fit. You got to hire people who fit with your organization. You've also got to acquire organizations that fit with yours.
That has been a great conversation with everybody in the room today. And I say every week, it's the fastest 30 minutes of my entire week.
Time warp here.
There's so much to talk about. I'd really like to delve into this a little bit more as we start that return to work process, or as Stephen Brown said last week, we're not ever going back. We need to do a reset, refresh.
Reset, refresh, not a return.
Exactly. So I would love to have you guys come back in the fall if you're open for it, and we can talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like now. if you're
Yeah, I think we'll know a lot more by that time. That'll be fun. So how's the weather in Edmonton in the fall?
Well, you won't actually have to be here. We'll still Zoom it. So it'll save you the jet lag. Thanks everybody.
Hey, thank you everybody. Thanks for being here. It's been great to see everyone. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Richard.
This has been wonderful.
Have a great day.